Hello, and welcome back to Talking Shop, a series of fun conversations with consummate concert artists, composers, opera singers, and choreographers. In essence, some of my favorite people in the entire universe. And today, I'm really happy to have with us Joe Jackson, who is a conspicuously rising composer whose music challenges the familiar, thereby drawing in his audience with his versatility of styles. And I love this quote that I found on your LinkedIn page. It says, to bridge communities together in the same way my music bridges styles together. That's just, I think already tells us a lot about you, but I would like to follow that up with the first question that I always ask all of my guests. And that is, what does being a composer mean to you personally?
Yeah, Lisa, thank you again so much for having me on here. It's a pleasure. To me, I mean, as I'm still, as you pointed out, I'm a conspicuously rising, composer and artist in this ever-changing, evolving world. And so there's always an evolution to how I'm thinking, where I think I am as far as like what I'm writing, why I'm writing this music, who am I writing it for? And so, I mean, I'll give you my best answers to where I am right now. And of course, it will probably change or evolve and adapt in 5 years. And I'm so excited to see where it would. Like, that's the beauty of it. So I mean, I like telling stories, right? That's nothing groundbreaking, but I really value connection. Now, to me, like writing music is, as a lot of artists would say, it helps me, express things I can't say in words, right? It gives me a vehicle to really let out frustrations, joys, the giddiness that I tend to get a lot when I get excited. Like that is where I'm able to really channel it and not accidentally, embarrass myself from my friends or family. And I don't know, maybe I'm getting too deep into that, but just going back in the quote, I really like what fascinates me is like finding that unity, finding a way to create a space for an audience members of all backgrounds, or as many differing backgrounds and genres or experiences that they've had growing up, to be able to come to these concerts and feel that they can open up, that they have the space and the option, and of course even the encouragement to really connect more with the humanity that's present, and the humanity that's performing this music that can seem otherworldly or very like multidimensional, these experiences. But remember that these are humans, that these are people like everyone else that's creating this. So and I feel like we all can work together. It's all collaborative. Even with the audience there, it is collaborative to the experience.
I love that. I think I love everything you said, but I think my favorite part was the giddiness and the joy because I can certainly relate to that. And it's just, aren't we lucky to be able to do this? It's just so wonderful. Um, so I wanted to ask you, so I was noticing on your website that in August you're going to the Pacific Northwest Conducting Institute. So the question popped into my mind, and this may be rhetorical, but do you conduct your own works? If so, tell us a little bit about how that experience feels to you while you're doing it, um, maybe even after you've done it, and then how does it feel when you are there and someone else is conducting your work?
Sure. So to give that first part, well, actually to give context to the event, so I won't be conducting, at least exclusively at this institute. I'm just having the piece performed that we will talk about later. But I will also answer the question I have conducted before, mostly just chamber works. Most it's actually Persevering, the original, and again I'll give short clip notes of this because I think we'll probably talk about it more in depth later. But when it was originally written as a Piero ensemble, I did conduct that for my senior recital at James Madison University, where I did my undergrad. I conducted that, of course, a couple other works on that recital as well. And I've always been fascinated with conducting. As the more I studied scores, the more I watched performance videos, just the more I got, and even just being in the rehearsals points from on the other side of the podium, like really paying attention to how they rehearse, how they try to bring the big picture together. Whether sometimes that works, sometimes not as well. and it's just no, it gets me more and more interested in just more than what I currently do. Way more about the ecosystem, the logistics, the machine as to how these concerts are programmed, curated, and rehearsed, and then eventually performed, right? And so and then I mean, I guess I think answer the other half of your question. I might ask that again, but how like what has it been like for me conducting my own works versus someone else conducting a piece of mine, and I'm watching from the spectator. So I mean, it's kind of fun. So they're both fun, but when I'm on the podium, like I mean, there's a lot of things I'm learning, right? It's like, oh, there's like a lot of response delay. Like I have to like keep in mind I'm always going to have to be ahead of them to a certain degree, depending on. And I've conducted ensembles where it's actually been like very instantaneous. Like, huh, interesting. I was not expecting that. It almost throws me off. But so that group was the Austin brass band I play with here in Austin, and I'm also their composer in residence. And so I actually conducted the first work I wrote for them last year called "A Glow." And I actually conducted, rehearsed, and the premiere of that, and that was really fun. And then now switching perspectives a little bit to watching the conductor, and oh, I mean, it's such a great experience because you get to see what goes in their head, how they're interpreting the black notes on the pages, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then doing their best to, especially when it comes to premieres, right? First performances where you have no idea, like just even when a piece has been performed, right? There's still a lot, like it still needs subsequent performances to really find the essence of what that piece is and how, and like kind of the core way of performing it. Whereas premiere, you may be able to get that, but otherwise you're just perhaps in some ways you're just trying to just get the notes off the page and really getting the basics. But to actually really get the essence, like how we always perform Beethoven and all the other canons, like how there's so many recordings, so many different ways of interpreting that, to see that interpretation birth from the beginning, it's really magical, and it does inspire me to want to eventually conduct my own works one day. I mean, I'd love to if that opportunity ever arose, but no, conducting is very fun to me from both spectator and being at the podium itself.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that it kind of informs your writing to a certain extent?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think actually going back to that point where I talk about thinking outside of myself, because even when I write music, I kind of have these three questions in my head that, of course, has been inspired from guest artists over the course of time, but it's like, so I'm writing this piece, right? Well, first question I ask myself is, well, why am I writing this? Well, that's actually the big question, but more practical one. There's three practical ones I want to share is what do I want to get out of this piece? And I'm not talking about awards. I'm not talking about performances. Like, what from me writing this music, what am I learning from this? What am I trying to get? Second one is what I want my musicians to get out of it. That could be something pedagogical, like something orchestrational, instrumentation. Like what do I feel I can contribute to these musicians here? Maybe that's careers or just, there can be a lot of ways to interpret that. And then the third final question is what I want my audience to get out of it. And right, so like, they chose to spend their time, or money to come see this performance. And so it's like, first of all, thank you for coming, and so let me, like, in a way, like, reward you, or thank you by creating this music for us to share together. So to tie that into the conductor aspect is, I mean, yeah, to answer objectively, do think a lot. I've learned to think a lot about, being from the conductor side. Like, oh, I'm writing this piece, and then there are times I'm like, I actually put myself in that spot. I'm conducting on my own. It's okay. Am I right? Am I writing this in a way that's, thoughtful? That's, not conventional, but like effective. Yes. That's going to eliminate as many questions as possible. So that's another big point when writing, really for anything, but especially with large ensembles with limited rehearsal times, that you have to make sure that when you're writing and engraving the music, that you have what you want as, conveyed and portrayed as consistently and concisely as possible, so that there are no questions. They can get it down, and then you can spend more time actually getting closer to the main core essence of the performance versus, is this note the same as this other person? Or, hey, I have a bad page turn. It's like things that can eat up crucial time. So I and even expression, right? It's like, oh, I think I want to go slower here. Oh, I can see them slintan doing, or even a cello. Like there's, yeah, I do think a lot about when I'm in that conductor spot when I'm writing, because I think it goes back to the collaborative spirit. Like, there's just more I let them be able to to work with,
Yeah.
and then we can work together to really, just,
Yeah.
see what more we can get from that. It's
Yeah.
when I'm thinking outside of myself.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing when artists work together like that. And I know I've talked to several composers and some, working with conductors, performing their music or rehearsing their music. Some of them seem to have a more input, with the conductor than others. And so I don't know what your experiences have been with that.
Actually, you should repeat that question. I think I dozed
Yeah,
off.
that's okay. I've talked to several composers who sometimes they have a lot of interaction with the conductor
Right.
performing their music. Other times that's kind of a forbidden area. So I didn't know what
Right.
your experience is with that and how you feel
Yes.
about it.
Yeah, I've had experiences where I got a lot of attentions. Like, hey, what do you really think of this? They were really valuing my feedback and making sure my interpretation was sound. And then I've actually had things in the middle where it was back and forth. It was like, oh, I'm not going to speak unless I'm spoken to, kind of kind of ordeal. Which again, I'm respecting, because I don't really have, I'm not really trying to make a statement with any of this. I'm just really just observing what I've experienced.
Yeah, yeah,
Again, there's still a lot that I'm learning and getting to know this ecosystem that we love. And then I've had experiences where there was zero input unless I actually had to come up to the conductor, either like after rehearsal during the break, like, hey, I noticed these issues that I feel like are worth bringing up based on the rehearsal time that we have. It's okay, these are quick fixes or something that, hey, just keep in mind. Like, it's because that's also important from the composers too, is like knowing, what, especially for premieres, it's like
hmm
what things are worth really like ironing out, and then what things are not worth dying on the hill for. Because you know what, we can figure this out. The second performance, it's not the end of the world. Or versus, oh no, this really needs to be sorted out now.
yeah,
And once you're able to really set that aside, and that, of course, that makes you more prepared to really contribute effectively
hmm
when you are able to speak and contribute to the rehearsal. And I do think it's important that composers should get as much input as they can, but it's also important on us to really know, like, well, what is important to us, understanding the reality, the pragmatic realities of rehearsals, and knowing, okay, what can we do with this amount of time? I have this amount of time. Let's focus on these issues, and knowing when to set it aside for a subsequent performance. Now that you have more errata to have laid down and have ready to go for the next group, so that again, less questions are asked, and now you can really get to the core essence of what you think how this piece should be performed, at least at its core.
yeah. I think that's so important, and just I'm sure conductors appreciate. I mean, it's just there are always these little fine balances that we have to navigate in our art, and I think that's definitely one of them. And it's just such a privilege to have our works performed by orchestras anyway. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate your kind of discussing all of those aspects. I wanted to delve a little bit deeper into some of the pieces that you've composed. I listened a little bit to Perseverance, and it just, oh, I love that piece, Joe. It's just so moving. And you know, I've talked to several artists about their COVID experiences. I mean, not pointedly,
Sure.
but it's just come up.
Yeah.
It's a part of our being over the last like 5 years, and so I wanted to know a little bit about. It's an emotional piece, so I wanted to
Right.
know a little bit about what your journey was like during that time, how this piece emanated from that, and just overall your experience. How did it get you through that difficult time, and what it
Yeah.
looks like now, 3 years after it was finished in 22.
Yeah, so Persevering is what it's called. Perseverance was an old title that I
Oh,
had.
okay.
And if yeah, I'd be curious to see where you found it, because then I could make an edit to that.
I
But
think
it
I
used to
think
be
it was
called Perseverance in my computer files before I
yeah.
changed to Persevering when I submitted it to things. But they both are same in this essence, so that's fine. But I just want to let people know for the recording, it's called Persevering, and I because yeah, I wanted to change it to the act the ongoing action person, right? So anyway, I'm going to talking too much about that. So persevering, I I knew I wanted to write a piano ensemble piece at the time. Like I was, this is sophomore year of undergrad, and I was looking at a lot of different, competition sites that professors share with us every now and then, right? Composers site, Society for Composers Incorporated, American Composers Forum. Like I was looking through all of those, and piano ensemble, or at least that core type of chamber ensemble, is something that's, well, at least I would still say it's still the same today, but 5 years ago, very, very popular. I was like one in every 4 or 5 call for scores was asking for that core instrumentation. I was like, huh. And I see the makeup of it, right? Flute, clarinet, violoncello, piano, and or percussion or voice as like the core and bass. It's like, that's a really eclectic combination of instruments. Like you have almost a little bit one of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew I wanted to write that piece, but I didn't know what it was going to be about yet. And then, of course, yeah, when COVID happened, we all lost something dear to us, perhaps in multitudes. And so I lost someone dear to me. They didn't die, just for the record, but I lost someone close to me that I really did care for, and it set me on, set me down to the bottom of the hill, if you know, the big dark stormy clouds, and over that summer during the first wave, it almost took control of me. I almost succumbed to that dark cloud, but through sheer will or even spirit, I am a spiritual person, so even through that, I think from time to time, it's like that I was able to get back on my feet and think that, well, and me already knowing and having heard stories of, raw emotion can really bring out the best of you, or the most evocative music, and even when you, or even just when you are an artist and you sad you're going through something, sometimes you transfer that into your art, and sometimes you get something really special out of it. And so me knowing that I think that phrase, or that concept of the phrase, persevered through those clouds, I know, to the point where, okay, I'm going to, instead of letting this negative energy try and take control of me, I'm going to take control of it and put it into my work, knowing or having a good idea that it's probably going to be something very powerful, right? And so that's what Persevering is, from the essence and all the weaving of his DNA. That's where that came from emotionally, and I actually turned it into, as you guys will know, into like 3 general scenarios. The first one called generally overwhelming, or gradually overwhelming, and the second one called loneful endeavors. That was more synonymous with, or not synonymous. That's more connected to the emotional betrayal that I experienced. Like that's where really the second movement, where a lot of raw emotion went to, and then the third movement's worth the wait, which, because I'm quite the optimist in most times, or at least I'm cautiously optimistic on a lot of things. So I always wanted to put at least some positive spin, even if there's possibility for more things to always come after us. That's why it's called persevering, because we are always persevering. We're never done. It's just, oh, you persevere through this one thing, great job. You should take that win, but it's stuck. It won't be the last thing, but hopefully it will strengthen you to better prepare for the next thing, because it could be stronger, it could be more weightier. So it's always having a sense of optimism, knowing that if you believe, then you will survive anything. You could survive anything.
Yeah, that's a concept I try to live by myself, and it's gotten me through a lot. So, and I think it's so wonderful that we have our music to be able to pour our emotions to, and to carry us through these times. So I guess you kind of answered my question of how it feels 3 years out. We're in different circumstances, you're having more
Yeah.
success. Do you go back to these works and still get inspiration from them, or do you have a different view of them and how they're impacting your life? How do you feel?
Yeah. Oh, I do. I listen back to my works pretty often. Actually, yeah, I still do today. But now I have more works to listen to today versus back
Yeah.
in the undergrad, where I would listen to it a lot. And I'm not saying that would be inspiration for the next piece, but it's like I'm listening to, okay, what can I improve on? was like, oh, I want to get better at writing for these collection of instruments, or writing for woodwinds in general. I want to get a better handle on that when I listen to the previous piece, which I am proud of and do believe it is at a place of completion, right? And that's okay. Well, how can I better myself in the next one? And even so, I listen back to eventually you get inspiration. Always seeing like, oh, I like this idea I had that I think I could expand more upon in the next one, or I'll continue to experiment with and play around and see how I can take this small idea that probably wasn't as significant in this piece for good reason, because something else was more significant, and make that one the signifier for the next one. And I do that for like not intentionally, but just like I eventually end up going back and listening to, okay, well, how have I sounded in these past 5 years? Let's say how, and maybe even try like predict the path I might go. It's like, oh, I think I could see myself going this route, not economically. Oh golly, it's run through my tongue organically. There it is. It's fine. So I do like listening back, but when I am composing, I do like to listen to a lot of different music, because as you mentioned, as you know from my past, I'm in a place, at least these past couple of years, I've been embracing more of my listening heritage, even though it has been a part of a lot of everything I've written, but just hasn't been at the forefront of my mind because I was so focused on the classical side, which was the bigger bug later when I did reach adolescent years. That was the bigger bug that got me interested. But now I'm in a place where I'm really bringing forth, the music that I grew up to, that I went to sleep to, that my father would play all over the house and my mother in the car all the time. Yeah. And now I'm able to really find ways to connect and combine, or even, I don't know, maybe create something new, who knows? And so that's why I try to, like, I even have a crazy playlist on Spotify. It's everything from video soundtracks to Christian gospel to contemporary classical orchestral, and I think that continues to keep my mind fresh. It keeps me thinking, oh, what are these people doing? How are they bringing something intriguing or doing something new with what's familiar? Which is kind of where I'm in this book too. Like I use a lot of familiar things, but there's always something new I try to put in each new piece. Either new to myself or new to the field. And I figure that out as I go. It's never really like set in stone until I figure out, oh, I think this will work for the piece, and it happens to satisfy this little inner requirement of mine. Yeah. Like I'm always learning from each subsequent piece.
Yeah. So I'm going to stay with this thread a little bit longer. And I know you grew up with an eclectic set of musical influences, smooth jazz, soul, R&B from your father's side, and classical and Christian gospel from your mom's side. Tell us how that influenced your evolution as a composer. How did you get interested in composing and know that was the thing for you? And just tell us your story and how you came to this life that you're so avidly developing here.
Absolutely, Lisa. Gosh, where to start with that? Well, I will start with how I got into composing, and then I believe from there I can stem into how the music I listen to has informed that. So I started band in 6th grade on alto saxophone. I will try not to go too much into the instrument story, because that's not important. About if I feel like it's relevant, then I will bring it up. So I'm alto saxophone. We're now fast forward to 7th grade, and I started getting the bug for concert band music, and from playing and performing. So I would listen to a lot, but I eventually. Also, a spring project we had in 7th grade was Introduction to Notation Software. And it was Finale 2010 at the time, from the band director. And I thought it was revolutionary. But I do want to highlight that a period beforehand, I had already found publishing. I had that age-old question. Well, not age-old, but for me it's like age-old. It's like, oh, how do band directors get their music? Yeah. Like, they just have a library, which, of course, spoil it, they do. But where do they, surely, where do they find this stuff? Mm-hmm. And there was this piece. That's what I was trying to remember. There's this piece by composer Randall Stanridge called "Adrenaline Engines" that we performed in seventh grade. and I loved that piece to death, to the point where I actually went home to my family computer and looked it up. Like I looked up that piece name and found, of course, lots of YouTube recordings. But of course, I found one of the main pages on J.W. Pepper with the studio recording and the full score, and I realized, oh, this is what this is what benders are using to work with us. So through that, I learned how to read a conductor score, and started listening to a lot more of Randolph Standard's pieces, and started listening to more and more pieces. Found my way on 2 different publishing sites, and just continuing to amass myself with this cache of concert band music, which I only listened to voluntarily at the time. I would listen to anything, but for me to actually look it up and search, it was concert band music at that time. And it was actually only the fast-paced music too. I didn't have enough respect for the lyricism yet, which of course now fast forward today, where it's kind of one of my strongest points is my ability for lyricism.
Yeah.
So because I've already had this amassed knowledge or accruing knowledge of like score studying and music and being able to, so when Finale came into the picture, we did a small group project. I actually ended up I actually kind of took over my little group, and we just kind of like almost recreated one of Randall Sandwich's pieces called Afterburn, which is part of that same trilogy with the Adrenaline Engines trilogy he wrote. Afterburn was the first one of that trilogy, so we kind of created a passage from that, and then later on I got my father to get me a copy of Finale 2011 the following year, and so now I had it at home. I was doing a lot more with it at home, from playing around different instruments to eventually I started transcribing scores directly from J.W. Pepper, and not to like make them better or anything, just to really just get practice typing them in.
Sure.
Looking at it retrospectively, and by typing all these pieces in, learning how to put slurs, articulations, dynamics, key changes, right? I was picking up on a lot of the patterns and nuances, even though I had no terminology at the time, next to none. But I was picking up on the patterns the more pieces I did, or the more I studied, and especially from different levels, from beginning band to grade 5s and 6s to professional level. Even looking at film scores, a project I did in 8th grade for my mother was Polar Express. It was a concert band selection. I got her to actually buy the score, so that was the first handheld score I had, was a concert selection of Polar Express, which is one of my favorite films by Jan Silvestri. Of course, let me finish up the story now. So by typing all these scores as a finale, I essentially did some like reverse engineering. I essentially looked under the hood and learned how these lines correlate. I learned how these patterns and nuances fit together or not intentionally. And to the point where I actually ended up writing my first piece in high school between freshman and sophomore year. And so what I think has been helping not to tie in the other genres a bit here is that, especially with smooth jazz, I think it's apparent in all the genres, but I find I get the most attraction, or at least I feel the most when I'm listening to at least the core of smooth jazz, because as we know, there's subsets within that as well. But when you're hearing these harmonies that sound like they're shifting dimensions, that sounds like they're taking it to a whole different plane, that whole age-old concept of say a predictability. Like you build up this progression that over time, when you listen to enough of them, it makes you think, oh, I think it's going to go here. I might not know what the terminology is, but you can just kind of just feel it right now, because I'm trying to bring the general orchestra's perspective into this. But then when it subverts it, but it doesn't feel jarring. Like it's actually not jarring in a negative way. Yeah. And it's like, harmonies that really feel like I'm crossing planes or I'm shifting realities. And that's all. And that's also something I wanted to try and re-emulate. And the more I started going back and listening and seeing that, there's similar things happening in concert band music. So when it comes to going from one modulation to another, and in that transition, whether it's direct or through good old counterpoint, right? And smooth voice leading, which I do love from time to time when I can. So that's kind of the answer to that question. Is like it's it inspired me from like building up the sense of predictability and knowing and having a sense of how they're not subverting that. But then as I'm getting older and learning to respect more of my heritage. Not that I didn't disrespect it, but I was just so focused on the classical, on the concert
Right.
band, the orchestral, the
Right.
film scoring. Because film scoring as well, there's a similar nuance where these modulations, now I'm learning more and more about the actual details and then the actual devices like common-tone modulations, chromatic medians. I'm like, oh, that's what those are called. It's like, oh, this makes so much sense now.
Yeah.
And so I think there's always been like similar nuances from all of that that I'm now refining and realize, oh, this is where it really started. And now making that more the forefront as I'm, writing more, getting to more pieces, getting to like where I feel like I've felt a level of comfort in my classical studies.
Hmm.
I've reached the point of like, okay, I'm feeling a plateau here, not negatively, just like okay, I feel like I'm getting the general sense. I've hit a threshold here where okay, now I can sit back a little bit and really focus, or really give more time to these other genres. I know that was a very long answer, but
No, 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 it's
that's
great. And I love the geeky details. I just really love that. I'm
right.
just
Yeah,
like, yes, 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 yes. It's just awesome.
I
It's
know.
awesome. And classical music is such the foundation for everything. And just to be able to have the upbringing and the exposure that you had and then dive so deeply into classical and then bring all of that back together, it's just got to be such an exciting experience for you. And I know now that you're starting your doctorate, that's going to come, at an even higher level. Um, I really, I have to talk about this piece with you, especially since I'm a Richmonder.
Yeah,
I'm going to talk about Born in the Iron Grip, which was commissioned by Valentina Pileggi and the Richmond Symphony. It was just such a wonderful experience meeting you and getting to hear this piece premiered by our amazing symphony and hearing it in person. And I just wanted to thank you for writing this beautiful and thought-provoking, really stunning work, paying tribute to a true legend, not only for our city, but for the world. Would you tell us a little bit about your thought process when you received this, not only when you received this commissions, but just when you received commissions in general? And you've
right.
touched on this a little bit already, but just how things progressed from there, especially regarding this particular piece.
Absolutely. So, first of all, thank you for such kind words. It was a blast to write that piece, and yeah, I have some great secrets to tell you, or a fun Easter egg to tell you about it once we dig into it a little bit later. So to bring up context, I'll start with like how I deal with commissions in general. It's how I'm learning and adopting a mindset for when people approach me. I've actually first started this mentality that I've adopted and constantly evolving for commissions is when I had my first orchestral professional commission with the Allentown Symphony a year prior to the Richmond premiere, um, with Diane Witchery as the conductor and musical director. And what what fascinated me was I wanted to know what else was on the program. Like, yeah, she wanted to commission me and have me write a 7 to 8 minute piece to go with Beethoven 9, but I was, and of course, no pressure, right? But I later got the curiosity during the very early stages of thinking about that piece was, what else is on this program? Because at least to me, I think it is important that I write that. I mean, I would want to write a piece that can have a place in the program that's being fit, being placed with. And of course, there's lots of questions and things we could talk about that and different implications. But I just want to focus on like, well, what I wanted to get out of it. What was my focus? And my focus was, well, I want to write a piece that, of course, can be programmed anywhere, but I also wanted to make sure it wasn't going to go too off the rails or too out of left turn for what else was programmed. And considering it was Beethoven 9, Florence Price, her Adagio, and sorry, yes, oh no, I think I have the title wrong. It's a similar title, if not Adagio, but also Adolf Hailstork, his Fanfare, An Amazing Grace. And so I really like seeing and hearing what these other pieces are, so I can see, okay, how can mine fit, but also, still be me, right? So it's not like I'm trying to cater or succumb to the program. It's like, well, I want to make sure this is a theme program, but also give something that is me, that lets the audience know that, hey, this is who I am, and hopefully it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I adopted that similar mindset to Richmond. Now, especially for Richmond, because in contrast with Allentown, I kind of had pretty much free creative range as to what I wanted to write about. Whereas the Richmond, they actually gave me a few people to look into because they're a big part of them that you Lisa, and other Richmonders that may be listening may be aware if they're part of the symphony is that they, at least these past few years, I don't know how long they've been doing this, but they've been doing this for a good while. Where they program with the intention of highlighting Virginia stories of Virginia artists.
Yes.
And when they reached out to me, Matt Wilshire, the vice president of operations, they wanted to potentially bring these stories to life and see, and they gave these stories to me. So to briefly go through them, Maggie J. Walker is one of them, John Mitchell Jr., Bill Bojangles Robinson, and Arthur Ashe. And so I spent 6 months after we. First, I just said yes, because of course, you can say no, hello.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, of course.
Yes.
This is it was always funny because I always viewed that symphony, being a Virginia native, as a benchmark symphony work. I feel like, I know I'm doing okay when this group reaches out to me, or when I'm able to work with these guys in any capacity, and for it to happen. I mean, it's crazy. It's mind blowing to me. I still sometimes I'm in denial from time to time. But so I spent 6 months researching, blanket researching, and going a little bit more in depth on all four of those people. And at first, I actually wanted to write a piece that was going to combine all four and to do like a through line. But later on, I realized, well, I'm only allowed 15 minutes, which of course is perhaps more than some people may get. So it's, even though it's not short, but it's also not long enough that I don't think I could respectfully go through all these people's stories in 15 minutes. And so I actually ended up focusing on one, and the person that kept hitting me in the back of the head, even when I wasn't researching, and I kept finding more connection with and relatability with, was Arthur Ashe, with how he used his passion for tennis to either directly or indirectly fight against racial segregation and oppression at the time, and how he was kind of a silent protester, because that's kind of how I'm feeling about myself. Where I was like, I want I want to be able to tell these stories, but also I feel like I don't want to hit people on the head with it to an unnecessary degree. Right. I was like, right, so but because of that, and of course I watched this documentary Citizen Ash, and I think there's another one on the way, and just maybe be able to talk to the curator of the Black History Museum, Mary Lauderdale. We had a nice 2-hour conversation where pretty much Arthur actually ended up dominating because he was the most recent of the four.
Wonderful.
And it was just so impactful just hearing more about him. And it's like, okay, I think and the biggest one that was like kind of a deal, it's kind of it can't be a deal breaker. Like the timing was, that year it premiered this year, and I think it technically happened a few weeks ago, this month, a couple of weeks. That was the 50th anniversary of his Wimbledon championship win from 1975. And I saw, and I was doing that research, I saw that, and I was like, okay, I have to at least include Arthur Ashe. At the very least, he has to be mentioned here. But then I realized, no, I want to fully go on, because the timing is just too good. It's just too good right now. And so that ended up becoming the centerpiece. And I wanted to, again, going back on how I wanted to talk about, battling, racism and fighting for, equality amongst, different communities. It's like, I wanted to make sure that just with Born in the Iron Grip, the focus was on his celebration. But of course, that celebration did not come easy. And in fact, he did lose the first time to Jimmy Connors, I think like a year or two prior. But then in 1975, he faced up against Jimmy Connors again, and this time, of course, he took the win, which of course signified a lot of things. Even when he did lose, it was still an important signifier. Like, wow, this man who's black made it to the UK to compete in this national thing. Where back in Virginia, he was not allowed in a lot of private clubs. Even when he had a manager that would vouch for him, like he would still have trouble getting to a lot of courts. And I related a lot to him when his parents, and I believe my parents are in a similar manner, where growing up in the South, especially with Arthur Ash's mother and father. Let me highlight that for a small second. Is that they wanted him to not get into any trouble whatsoever. They didn't want to give, like the reason why I believe is the reason why he's so well mannered and well tempered and well spoken. At any point you see him talking or on cameras, I think is part of how his parents conditioned him to portray himself. And I felt a similar thing from my parents, like, don't give the white folks any reason to come after you. So we work really hard to be those good Samaritans, or these nice people that are non-confrontational, not trying to cause trouble. And so that was one of the biggest things that made me relate a lot. It's like, okay, because the biggest thing for my professor at the time was like, I have to find something personable from any of these characters, these people I was researching. Like I need to do my best to find some personal connection to, or relate to their person in some way, because that's what's going to help really the piece live and breathe. If I can really find the personal stake in a way.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how that piece came to be in the early stages. How I sent on Arthur Ashe, and one of the writer piece said, celebrated, but also highlighted the adversities he went through, and still, even the adversities that are still apparent today, even though it's not as perhaps obtuse or as obvious as it was 50 years ago, but it still exists today. And it's like trying to pose the questions, well, how can we continue to move forward? Mm-hmm. He's accomplished a lot, so how? Because thanks to him and like those other characters, I doubt I would have had a better experience in my K through 12 education growing up in rural Stanton at the time, like if not for them, fighting for what they believe in.
Yeah.
So I thank them for that.
That's such a beautiful story, and I love all the things that weave in and out of that, like your persevering story, and just the tribute to him, and the personal connection that you found with him, and it's just really, really, truly inspiring. We have just a few minutes left, and I just wanted to touch on this. I have a feeling that we're going to have to come back and have more conversations with you, but just as a brief overview, I'd love to talk about your instrumentation, because you mentioned this earlier, but you love finding very eclectic instrumentation. How does that process happen for you? I know you use a lot of percussion and Persevering, and if I remember correctly, also in Arthur Ashe. And is that just a favorite set of instruments for you, or how do you go about thinking about instrumentation and making decisions about that?
Well, to talk very quickly about the percussion side of things, of course, growing up in a band-centered curriculum, of course, percussion was really part of it. A lot of groups would have like 7 to 11 players, and so I got really used to hearing a lot of things happen behind me. But in addition, when I hit 8th grade and I got into the marching band scene, and I'll tell you, that scene changed my life. I love marching band, and of course, and there's actually a season going on right now. You may or may not have heard about it, but it's called Drum Corps International, where it's like marching band but on steroids. It's an art form that has evolved from military popular shows to now these acts of theater and messages of musical theater and almost operatic, and just that's awesome how I've seen the evolution. But the music that's written, and of course how percussion is used, is always like a constant driving force, and always questions your interpretation of rhythm, right? That culture has really made me love percussion, and try and do my best to make it be best utilized when I'm able to write for it. And so when it came to Persevering, because I could have chosen voice or piano, but no, well, I piano in voice or percussion, but I feel like, what, I want percussion because I am a sucker for bellow vibraphone. I love that combination. I love it so much. I try not to overdo it, but in subsequent pieces. But when I am able to use it, I just think it's so magical. And so, I think percussion really helps me set the atmosphere. Really helps me, contribute to the scene, the setting, and of course even a character themselves. Like in Loveland Endeavors, the vibraphone is its own character. I mean, it's the loneful person. Mm-hmm. When you look at it, and it's
absolutely
very interesting how I have it, because it starts out with just bows, It does not play on mallets at all in the second movement, and at the very end, it actually uses two bows at the very end, and then the third movement is a combination of bowed and mallets. So I think the first one was just mallets. It's a very interesting progression that I've created there, where I think Vibraflow is kind of maybe synonymous with me, maybe. Probably. I believe it. I believe your interpretation, but I'm not gonna. I think it's best to. I won't say it's 100%, but there's definitely a lot of me in the percussion writing. Same with Born in the Iron Grip, where I really wanted to go hand with it, or at least really make them work. Because you hear about the stigma of a lot of pieces having barely any percussion, or when there are percussion, they sit for like 80% of the piece, and that's probably something I'm not saying combating, but just I was like, well, if I can really make it work, then I'm going to. Yeah. And funny enough, I'm actually finding times where I'm actually going with the opposite. It's like, I actually just want just need folks so much on the string sounds here, or like the instruments. So, but when the percussion does come in, it's so much more. I don't know. I feel like I'm reverting back to like the old ways, but no, it's just interesting to think about it. But I do love percussion, so when I am able to use it, then I really like to make it feel involved and parts.
I think one of my favorite things about what you just said is just thinking about instruments and how much they are a certain character or a certain person or thing that you're writing about. And oh my goodness, I wish we had all the time in the world, but again, we'll just have to have you back really quickly to wrap up. Is there something you're particularly excited about coming up that you'd like to tell us about? And if so, how can we find out more about it?
Sure. Well, next April 25th, 26th, I'll be returning to the Allentown Symphony for a commissioned cello concerto as a co-commission with them and the Seattle Collaborative Orchestra with Anna Edwards, who's also a big influential character to me, which I could probably talk about in the next call. But now we're looking to get other orchestras on this, so it's going to be really exciting. And I think the piece is tentatively called Anchor. It's in a similar vein. I'm actually intending to be in a similar vein as Persevering, like similar as far as like aesthetically. But of course, now it's 5 years later, so I'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I've been cranking on it all week, and I'm really happy. I'm really excited for what's starting to really bubble up and come up. So at April 25th and 26th, 2026, that's what's happening. There will be subsequent performances, hopefully throughout the next year or two, but the premiere will be happening up in Allentown. So not too bad of a drive from Virginia, but otherwise keep your eye out. And
absolutely.
I'm sure hopefully there'll be more close by.
Yeah, very exciting. Well, that does it for today's episode. Thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.